Are there any energetic sources or symbolism behind a divine energetic presence that we can draw from the world of the ancient British Isles? Well, when it comes to ancient Britain, we can look towards an area where there were many different tribes, and there wouldn't have been a separate Wales, a separate Cornwall, and a separate England. These are all sort of new names to describe these places that bring upon borders that don't actually exist. So when it comes to looking back, we can look to the old Brythonic languages and the old Gaelic languages. And when it comes to what we now know as Wales, which is a little section of the island that is known today as Britain, we can look towards a word called Awen, and this word Awen is divinely and inherently sacred. It has got to do with the muse of the universe, the divine and inspirational creativity that permeates all of existence, in which us as human beings are able to access and co-create with the earth, with the universe, to bring through divine inspiration and creativity. Now, I'm going to go into 3 aspects of this word, Awen. I'm going to talk about the historical understanding of what the people in the ancient world understood this word to be about. I'm going to talk about what today people in the modern world associate with this word Awen, and I'm also going to talk about what it really is. From my perspective, I guess, as someone who works with this Awen. So firstly, where does this word come from? What are the historical accounts of this word? So although this word very much likely predates the written records, where we find this word today is in Welsh and Old Welsh poetry from sacred scriptures that are thousands of years old. But mainly when we find this word Awen, it is seen within poetic verses by Christian Celtic monks. Now, if you're pagan, don't get scared of this word Christian. When looking at ancient Britain and the practices, teachings and traditions that we have left over, you cannot untangle Christianity from the Celtic world, because the Christians and the Celtic people began to embrace this word Awen together. You can see the word Awen within verses associated with the muse of the universe, intuition, divine inspiration. Awen is a gift from God. Now, who was it that truly tapped into this Awen? Well, these people were called the Bards, and the Bards have existed from the Iron Age times, likely before then, up until today. So there are people who work with the Bardic craft, and they have done simply forever on these isles, and it's beautiful to look at, because we might think that we have lost so much and we don't have anything to draw from in terms of spiritual tradition and practice. But the Bardic craft is all about, and has always been about, divine language, sound, and the breath in which animates the sound that comes out of our mouth as a way to heal the body, heal the people, tell stories, sing song, chant, and co-create using spells, weaving words with magic. And today we know through scientific study how powerful the voice and the breath really is. We can look towards sound frequencies, we can look towards the teachings from Eastern traditions, such as the Hindu tradition, where we have this language of Sanskrit, where we can enter altered states of consciousness through chanting, because for thousands of years people have known the power of the word and the power of breath. And this is something that was also known by the people of ancient Britain. It is something we have forgot, but it is something we know deep down. Have you ever heard the saying that to understand a group of people is to understand their language, that to learn about a culture is to learn about their language? Well, no wonder we're so lost over here. We do not speak the language of the land. I'm Welsh and I don't know the language of Wales. So connecting to this word Awen is transformational for me. I have spent many days crying, moments crying, with a grief and a loss for not knowing my language. So even if you are not from these British Isles, perhaps you're over in America and you're not connected ancestrally, well, you have an ancestral connection, but you're not here on these lands. There are many of us over here who are also disconnected and severed from the natural world, which is why I'm actually here to bring this wisdom to you. So the Awen in a historical context was a divine energetic source used by the Bards as a way to sort of channel divine inspiration. The word Awen, when looking at the etymology and the origin of the word, we can look to the word awel, and this is symbolic of the breath and the wind. So we can look to Awen of the breath of life, the wind that kind of moves through the world, that animates life itself. And the Bardic people would spend years and years and years and years training as a way to, harness this craft. It was a craft. You would get lead bards who would teach the younger bards. In the Iron Age period, the bards were the ones who would hold the memories of their tribes because they didn't have a written language. They had all of the information stored within them. They would tell these stories through song and poetry and storytelling. And then in the medieval period, it moved on to these being a little bit more religious, a bit more of a religious role, and they would actually be the ones to promote their kings or their patrons, and they would have rap battles with other bards, which we'll move on to how we can see this Awen in the modern world and come back to rap in a minute. But since then, this Awen has evolved into something that has hidden itself again in the landscape. It didn't quite show up until the 1800s, where there was a Druid revival in Britain, where you've got the modern Druids. And now I think we will move on to the modern understanding and perspective of this word Awen. So the modern understanding and perspective of this word Awen draws from the old stories and the old poems, and there is a character within Welsh mythology called Ceridwen. This character, Ceridwen, today is seen as a goddess. This character, Ceridwen, is the one who brews the cauldron of Awen. She brews a potion in which 3 drops of Awen come out and begin a spiritual awakening for someone called Gwion Bach. This boy called Gwion Bach accidentally touches the Awen and becomes Taliesin. In this story, Taliesin is the first sort of major bard in Welsh history, and he is known to this day as one of the most powerful and phenomenal bards to have ever existed. This word Taliesin actually represents and can be translated into radiant brow, shining brow, and can be associated with the third eye or the golden brow in Eastern traditions. But to just come back and move on to the modern understanding of the word Awen, this Awen today is seen as a divine and energetic inspirational source within the universe. And although we do not know exactly what the people of old associated with this word when it comes to pre-Christian times, today it has taken on a new form. And if you are an artist, if you make music, if you dance, or if you have ever seen anyone perform, you have witnessed the Awen. Today we're able to measure brainwaves, and we have something called the flow state in psychology. The flow state is where you can measure the brainwaves, and it is where someone is in such a creative flow that the best, most organic and authentic pieces of art come through, whether, as I said, that's like dance or poetry or song. Some of the best pieces of artwork in any medium come through being in this flow state. I believe that this is tapping into the Awen, and obviously for people who, perhaps play guitar and sing, it is a craft that takes a very long time to master. But getting into that flow state is something that sometimes we cannot control, so it is a very spiritual experience. And now, just to get into my experience with the Awen. How have I seen it in the world? So I used to be, well, still am, a hip-hop MC and a poet through freestyle. You know, when you see rappers freestyling, they can just kind of go for a while diving in to see what kind of trial and error will come through sin and living within. That is where I have come from in terms of poetry and rap. And I see this Awen move through people, especially young youths within like underground grassroots scenes. I believe that this Awen is like truly being tapped into within these communities. And you can look towards the hip hop ciphers and hip hop battles today and compare them to the Bardic battles of the past. I also truly believe that when I am watching someone and I am in improvisation with singing, I am tapping into that Awen. So it is very prevalent throughout the entirety of the universe. And just like chi or prana from the Eastern traditions, they don't stop at the borders. No, this Awen is a universal source. But there is something here in the Welsh land. There is something within the natural world here, in these waters especially, that gifts this Awen quite fiercely to the people, because the Welsh language and the ancient Brythonic languages are languages of poetry and song, which is why for me I have started to chant in my native language, in my land's language. I woke up one day and I was like, why am I not chanting in the language of my land? I highly appreciate the languages of a mantra from the Hindu traditions, for example. They have really benefited me because they have written down all of the language of science of sound and breath. But here we don't have that written down from years and years and years ago. We don't have elders here that carry the knowledge and the wisdom of the ancient Brythonic languages. But that doesn't matter because the Celtic traditions are living traditions. We sort of perhaps didn't write down the stories and we didn't write everything down because we understood that life is constantly changing. This universe that we live in is a transforming story, and to write it down and put it into a block is to solidify something that is ever changing. I would absolutely love for you to share what your perspective on the Awen is. Do you feel the Awen? Have you entered that flow state, and do you see where I'm seeing those similarities? Is there something in a historical context perhaps that you would like to put into this conversation? Because it's very important that those of us who are wanting to reconnect spiritually to the land, that we start to root again into a sense of belonging with our ancestral lineages and the land that we are on, as opposed to taken from other cultures that we perhaps do not understand. There is something within us all that is calling to deeply remember who we are, deeply forgive ourselves, and deeply acknowledge the responsibility of all that we have done in terms of colonization, but also take back that power, take back that spiritual essence that is rightly ours, and return to the mystery of life, return to co-creating with the universe, becoming the muse to create a better life for all of us here on earth. Awen, 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 everybody. Mwah.